Good evening, and welcome to Camera Music, a production of the Chamber Music Society of Detroit. I'm Steve Wagaman, president of the Chamber Music Society, coming to you from our humble studio in Southeast Michigan and your host for tonight's concert, at least for the first few minutes. I want to give a special word of welcome to our audience here in Metro Detroit. On a night that would have been the grand finale of our 76th consecutive concert season, we miss you terribly tonight, and we're so happy that you can join us in this alternative way. In a few minutes, our concert by the Gryphon Trio will be streamed to us live from the beautiful new Isabel Bader Center for the Performing Arts at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. 4 other organizations have joined us to make this concert possible. The Isabel, of course, also the Ottawa Chamber Fest, whose artistic director, Roman Boris, you will hear on the cello tonight, Rhode Island Chamber Music Concerts in Providence, and from right here in Metro Detroit, our good friends at the War Memorial in Grosse Pointe. So before I turn it over to our Canadian partners, let's hear from Joseph Correa at the Rhode Island Chamber Music Concerts and Charles Burke at the War Memorial.
Good evening. I'm Joseph Correa, Executive Director of Rhode Island Chamber Music Concerts. We are so pleased to join the Chamber Music Society of Detroit, the Isabel Bader Center for the Performing Arts, Ottawa Chamber Fest, and the War Memorial in presenting tonight's webcast by the brilliant Gryphon Trio. The Gryphons last performed in our series during the 2013-14 season, and this is such an exciting way to welcome them back. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our devoted audience in Rhode Island and let you know that we've really missed seeing you in the concert hall this spring. It's wonderful to be able to present this special concert for you by one of the world's leading piano trios. I hope you enjoy tonight's performances and take good care until we gather again in person. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Charles Burke. I'm the president and CEO of the War Memorial here in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. We are proud to partner with the Chamber Music Society of Detroit in special presentation of tonight's performance of the Gryphon Trio. As a patriotic, cultural, and community leader, we are thinking of you. We're thinking of your health and safety, and we're especially thinking of those who are on the front lines of this pandemic. Until we can meet again as a community, we ask that you check us out and all of our work that's going on virtually at warmemorial.org. We thank you for joining tonight. We thank you for choosing to experience art and culture and really improving the lives of humanity through art. With that, thank you for being here and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Charles and Joseph. Now it is an honor to turn this over to Tricia Baldwin, director of and visionary behind the Isabel Bader Center for the Performing Arts. Thank you, Tricia, and welcome everyone.
Thank you so much, Steve, and welcome everybody to the Isabel Bader Center for the Performing Arts at Queen's University. We're so happy to welcome you here, and we're welcoming our wonderful audiences from Kingston, Ottawa, Detroit, Rhode Island, and Michigan. I want to give a special thanks to Beethoven Foundation and Joan Tobin for her support at the festival, but also want to point out that this will be the very first concert where the Beethoven Hamburg Steinway piano will be performed. Thank you, Jamie. So thank you to everybody who collaborated on the festival, and a special shout out to our fantastic Isabel production team led by Aaron Holmberg. Thank you so much for all the great work that you're doing. Now, Roman.
Tricia.
Aren't you just craving to hear live music?
Well, it is true, Tricia. We're absolutely thrilled to be here and physically separated. Jamie, in fact, did bring his hockey stick, which is about exactly the right distance to separate all of us, and so we are the correct distance apart. I mean, Annalie and I are a couple after all, so that we've got a bit of an advantage on that side. But Tricia, isn't it just inspiring to see how from the constraints of this situation, and let's really remember for a second, what a just what a burden and what a weight this is on our entire planet. So what a privilege it is for all of us in the arts, under these circumstances, to find, to apply our creativity, our innovation, to work together with all of the organizations that all of our guests are supporting, many of which I'm sure we would recognize. We've played for you in recent years. I mean, it's just so exciting. But, I've always said that from constraints come opportunities, and those that have heard me say it have heard me say it a few too many times now, but here's a perfect example.
And I think both of us are incurable optimists, and we actually love that in each other.
I think so, absolutely.
We just make things happen, and it's so exciting to make live music happen.
It is. I mean, what I also love about the way we've organized this particular experience is that we will have opportunities for questions. So unlike the regular, the many, many opportunities that our guests have to partake and take in concerts from YouTube or other sources, in this case, you'll be able to engage with us. Okay, we know that you're there. After we play the Beethoven, on a screen in front of us here, we'll be seeing some of the questions that we're hoping that you'll send our way. And it'll be so much fun to recognize names from the various communities in Detroit, Rhode Island, and in Michigan, and Ottawa, of course, that are involved. So I think that interconnectivity also makes this a very special thing, and I congratulate you, Tricia, and Steve Wagaman. Thank you so much for also being this incredible vortex of positive energy and optimism and that can-do spirit. It's something that we all really need, and I'm not surprised that such an energy is coming from people within the arts. And what's wonderful about all of this is we have a team of people here that is very well physically distanced, that have made this incredible venue shine the way it is on your screens today. Thank you, all of you. We've done all our due diligence, and I think that now it's up to us to actually, make the music happen. And yes, Tricia, we are very much looking forward. And we feel the audience there. We know that you're there. We'll close our eyes. We'll imagine all of your venues. And I think it's time to get to it.
Well, welcome, Gryphon Trio. We're so glad you're here.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we actually jump into the music, I'm going to ask my colleague, Jamie Parker, to say just a few words about our program.
Thank you. We'll be starting tonight's program with the Beethoven Archduke Trio, and I think my favorite thing about this piece is that it speaks to this wonderful friendship that Beethoven had with the Archduke Rudolph. And it's something that, as we all know, Beethoven had a lot of difficulties with his personal life, didn't get along with a lot of people. But I think with the Archduke, there was sort of a refuge. They would share meals, share drinks. The Archduke was an amateur musician, as some of you may know, so he studied piano and composition with Beethoven. And they just got along terrifically. And so one of the great rewards is that as long as we know the name Beethoven in history, we will also know the name of the Archduke Rudolph, because he dedicated so many great works to him. So as you can imagine, this piece, the first movement, really full of nobility and sort of really not a lot of anger, not a lot of drama. It's a much more joyous affair, and it's a beautiful, beautiful movement. The second movement is a bit of a kind of a rocca scherzo, not sort of a refined minuet, but a little more energetic, a little more rhythmic energy in this movement. The third movement are very beautiful theme and variations in a very remote key, so it has this really warm, distant, beautiful feeling to it. And what Beethoven does with this is you'll get the same theme that comes back. The note values get quicker, so we get quicker and quicker, but the progress of the theme, the harmonies remains the same. So underneath, you'll just sort of feel the same beautiful chorale-like melody that you'll hear in the opening of it. And then at the end of that, almost a trademark, he does a one-note modulation, which takes us from this remote, beautiful key of D major right back to B-flat major. And then the last movement is a very energetic, again, very exuberant, triumphant movement. In the coda, things get quite quick, and we're scurrying around crazily. And then at the very end, he sort of gets a little bit slower and quieter, and it's that classic sort of, waving bye, so long, see ya. And then there's this final big, loud flourish right to the end. So hope you enjoy Beethoven, Piano Trio, Opus 97, The Archduke.
Well, that's the only strange part, you know. We play, and Beethoven, you know, we do our best to unleash the magic and the beauty in this work and share it with you. I hope you enjoyed that. So, I think at this point, we might be taking some questions. We're just waiting for our wonderful technical crew to bring... very good, very good. Well, we have our first question, and indeed, it is from our friend Alex Thompson in Toronto, who is the manager of the Steinway Gallery in Toronto, and in fact was involved, very much ushered Tricia Baldwin and her piano selection team through the process of choosing this wonderful piano. So Alex Thompson is asking, how is the new Steinway at the Isabel Bader Theatre?
In one word, it's awesome. This is a great piano. 613139 serial number. Easy one to remember. No, it's great. I mean, we met last night, and I just recorded a few, a couple of short Brahms things and little Schubert, Debussy, and it plays like a dream. It's great. So thank you, Tricia, for getting this going, and thank you, Joan Tobin. It's really a remarkable gift to the city, the community, and the country. So thank you.
And thank you, Alex Thompson, for being such a great supporter of artists that require Steinway pianos. Thank you, Alex. So, might there be another question at this point? Let's see. Aha. So, somebody from Rochester Hills in Michigan, Ed Monsell. What type of dance is it in the fourth movement of the Archduke Trio? What is the specific significance of it, if any?
Well, what's interesting is that it has a dance-like feel, and yet it's not in three. And so, most of, typically, you'll have minuets and scherzi, sort of inner movements that are in three. But this last movement has that kind of feel to it, but it's not. So it's much more of a regular pa. So it's hard to say. I wouldn't know the exact name of the dance, and I probably wouldn't be able to actually dance the real dance. But I think
could try for us, couldn't you? I mean. Jamie likes to dance, but that's another story. All right. Might there be another question? Let's see what. Aha, Klaus from Canada. How does performing live in front of a camera, and I might add an empty hall, for online streaming compare to making a recording, video or audio, for commercial release? Similarities and differences. Well, Klaus, it's interesting that you should ask that, because we've actually recorded on this very stage. I'll say that our orientation on this stage when we record is actually quite opposite.
You would be shocked, actually.
Yes, the piano is there, pointed that way, and Annalie and I are over there, pointed that way. In any case.
We play into each other, which we've just found over, I think, the last 4 or 5 recordings seems to be the best.
Creates a nice sound stage for those of you listening at home. In any case, we haven't really answered your question, so how does it go?
Well, I think one of the things, you have a bit more of the adrenaline because it's live and it's sort of one try. So, but you're not sort of, you don't get that same kind of response as you get with an audience, and even just the rapport of talking with an audience, it's very different, talking to a screen. But I would say, another one of those little pressure things is that, and we've done some recordings here, so we have spent hours upon hours playing the same things over and over again until everybody's happy, and we don't have that luxury. Basically, it's one take and that's it. So there is that kind of pressure to try to play as well as you can, because there will not be, oh well, I can get it next time around, and it's like, oh Carl, look out for that G flat that I missed in bar 5. We don't have that luxury here.
I think another thing that I might add that's really evolved for me in the last 6 weeks. I mean, most of us have been engaging with friends and colleagues and patrons through Zoom, and it's been very interesting to sort of develop a kind of a sensitivity to that screen. Somehow I know that behind that camera that I'm speaking to, I have a much better sense now after these 6 weeks of the people and of the passion and of the exuberance and of all the listening and the concentrated listening that might be there. So I don't know.
Well, unlike Zoom, what would be great is if we could have a big screen and we could see you all
of
watching.
your faces. That's a dream. That's the one element to all this that I would love to add, is a screen out there in the hall that has all sorts of little Zoom faces looking back at us. But you know what? I think
I hear actually restaurants are now experimenting with putting wax dummies randomly in seats so people don't feel so alone in restaurants. So maybe we'll start doing that in concerts
in Germany, of course. Where they,
all the department stores that have gone bankrupt, just buy all their dummies and shove them in audiences.
Mannequins, of course. Well, how about one more question? One more. Might there be one more? Okay. Steve Schneider. Hi, Steve. In Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. How do you work out artistic differences of opinion when rehearsing? I'm leaving now. No.
The pianist is right. I mean, it's a good question, Steve, but I mean, as most of you know, the pianist is always right.
Well, I think we have found, we've been very lucky. Actually, as you can see, humor is one of those elements that our group does have, and I think it does allow us a little, a cushion and some latitude. We discuss things, we try things, and we've also learned about each other's preferences. We know when, for the most part, that it's a good time to ask a question and ask for a certain kind of request and try for a certain something. So I think every group develops its own sort of organic approach to decision making, and in some situations it's much more sort of business-like than it is in others. And I don't know, Annalee, would you like to add something to that?
I would say that, we have the privilege, of course, you spend hours and hours rehearsing and discussing varying, timing issues and obviously dynamic and concepts, but we have the privilege of playing a piece over and over, and we learn from those performances as well. So we'll come back into a rehearsal after a concert and say, well, that didn't really work. We need to rethink this. Or the other thing that happens is that a piece just naturally evolves over time. I think we all have a sense in performance now where we have the ability to play around a little bit, and so something might reveal itself, and we'll talk to each other after and go, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's about talking. It's about, I think what we cherish very much, and we're lucky to somehow all prioritize, I think, in an equal way, is that sense of conversation that takes place in chamber music, in all music. And I will say, we are very lucky to have such a wonderful pianist who also seems to have always prioritized great voicing. So this idea of always understanding, where the leading voice is. I mean, that's something we've always been able to count on you, Jamie, when you've had it. And then, of course, it's there when there's such clarity. Coming from the instrument that also plays a supportive harmonic role, when there's that much clarity in terms of line, it's much easier for the two instruments that can only play one line at a time to actually figure out when they need to jump in and out, and from that emerges a performance and an interpretation that we hope is understandable by you. Okay, well, I think so. We'll listen. Thank you very much for these questions. I think this is what makes this whole experience. I think it enriches it a great deal. And we're now going to move on to the Dvorak Dumki. When we finish that, we'll take more questions. And anyhow, Jamie, would you like to say something?
So the Dvorak Dumki Trio, he borrows from Ukrainian culture here. A dumka in Ukrainian is a thought or an idea, and it evolved into sort of this kind of epic poetry. And so you'll hear sort of epic music. There will be great struggles. There will be the sense of battle, conquest, failure, love, tenderness. I mean, all these great contrasts. And what Dvorak does with really all of the movements is you'll have two main ideas. So for instance, in the opening, you'll hear a very sort of dramatic opening in the cello and piano, and then a very quiet, beautiful melody in the violin and cello. And then after that, we all go into the sort of dance-like passage. And then there's a return of the dramatic and the sad, and then the dance-like thing. And so what you can sort of try to do at home is just sort of see who trades off on the melodies, because whenever these melodies come back, Dvorak, just to keep it interesting for everybody, lets somebody else play the melody and somebody else plays the accompaniment. So they really just go back and forth with that, with all the contrasts. I always say that the Dvorak Trio is one of the best values in chamber music, because whereas most pieces, most trios, quartets are 3 or 4 movements, this is 6 movements. So it's like you're getting 2 free here.
hope you enjoyed that. Thank you. Thank you to our wonderful technical staff. They're all clapping with their masks on behind a shield of glass. Anyhow, I'm hoping that this performance came across to you and that all things technical went well. I'm seeing some heads going up and down, things. Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful. Well, might there be some more questions?
Well, while those come up, I can't remember who asked that question before, and I'm sorry, it was either Ed or Steve. But somebody was asking what it was like to play for a virtual audience or versus a recording. And I do have to say, we do miss that conversation that we have with an audience. So that's the one thing we're still getting used to.
No, but I mean, in a sense, this is something in between. We know that you're there. And we know that you're listening, and actually, though, the one thing that's kind of cool is in the very quiet moments, in those moments where we compliment the audience on being so quiet. I can tell you that you're being incredibly quiet. It actually crosses my mind. This is the place where we love it when it's really, really quiet. Well, it was really, really quiet. Okay, we have a question from Patricia O'Connell in Ottawa, who's very closely connected to Ottawa Chamberfest. And Patricia is asking, how does it feel to be playing to all of us again, even though we are not right there? Well, in a sense, a question like that appearing on a screen like that, Patricia and Peter and everybody else at the McDonald residence, we know you're there, and we can feel it. And I tell you, it's a real thing. But that's,
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously once removed, but it is nice to play for all of our friends again. And I'll just say that, in case my wife writes in, my boys, they can have extra ice cream if they watch the concert.
Extra ice cream. For Max and Dylan. Okay, thank you, Patricia, for that question from Ottawa Chamberfest. Might there be, let's see, any questions from Rhode Island? Oh, from Kingston. Meg Freer from Kingston asks, Jamie is using an iPad, but he usually has printed music. I see, somebody's paying great attention here. You might ask, what size is the shoe that's on Jamie's left foot? In fact, he doesn't have one on his left foot. But in any case, how do you find the screen compared to using printed music? I know the pages move automatically. Actually, they don't. But do you get eye strain from the iPad?
Well, I got to say, I've done a lot of training with a lot of television and Netflix, so my eyes are accustomed to a lot of screen time. Adapting to that, the one thing that I'm not used to, of course, is only having one page. I'm used to having 2 pages, so it means I do have to turn my pages quite often. And for that, we all use actually the same brand, the AirTurn Duo. What I find is I've got big feet. And if I just rest my foot on it, I end up flipping pages by accident. So I always sort of surreptitiously slip my left shoe off when I use an iPad. I've used it for a bunch of stuff, like when we do stuff with Patricia O'Callaghan and so forth. But that's the adaptation. Also, I don't use soft pedal anymore because I don't want to be mixing up my left foot. So there's just a few little things, but you have to adapt, right? So,
well, Jamie, now that you're using the iPad, you can't turn to your left and say that the page turn was too loud.
I can't blame them anymore.
That it was too loud, or that it was too fast, or that it was too slow.
But the other problem it solves is, we can never predict the kind of lighting we're going to get in any venue that we perform in. And so, as one ages, the need to, have your music illuminated a certain way is even more important. So I know that Jamie often actually even travels, when he plays with a hard copy, he does travel with LED lights.
Start traveling with lights now. The Lotus lights out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, they're terrific. A row of 35 LED lights, and it'll light 2 pages of music really well. So
we're
shout out to them.
a free case. In any case. Might there be another from Ottawa Chamberfest audience? How wonderful to hear you performing together again. How have you been managing to rehearse as a trio? Well,
we haven't. Last night.
Well, there have been some interesting things going on. And actually, just last week, a week ago, we made a contribution to a wonderful project that was sort of coming out of Toronto called Urgent Live. And it was sort of a festival of 20-minute sets. And we commissioned Canadian composer David Braid to write a piece for us. And so we actually gave our first world premiere without actually rehearsing in the same place. And Jamie, the piece was written in such a way that it would come together in this way. So Jamie performed his component
And recorded
at
it.
home and recorded it on his iPhone. He emailed it to us. We projected Jamie on a wall, and we played along with Jamie, and we recorded all of that. So I guess you could say that last weekend's urgent episode was a kind of a virtual rehearsal. We played with virtual Jamie. But in fact, we're very lucky that the two of us are in fact married, and that we live in the same household. So as long as we stay a good hockey stick length away from Jamie, certainly as the regulations and rules ease, it should be easier for us to rehearse more often.
But using any kind of online forum doesn't work for chamber music yet. And we were just
rehearsing.
For rehearsing.
I mean, and we're hoping this works for you.
Well, we're together.
But I know. But
I mean, in fact, this is something that Annalee and I were on various committees at University of Toronto, and at any music school that's talking about this, how do we implement chamber music in September? And it's a big challenge. So, with spacing, you need a big space, even if you have a trio playing. And then, is the coach going to be, at the far end of the room? And so these are big concerns. Luckily, we've got so many years of experience that we can we pick a few pieces and say, okay, yeah, we'll just rehearse that the night before. That's fine. So, but it is great to be back playing, I got to say.
It absolutely.
But we
is.
were talking with our string quartet colleagues, and that one's a rough one.
This is difficult. This is difficult. 4 people. I mean. To come together. I mean, there are all sorts of things that people are considering, but in any case, we think optimistically, people are ingenious, things seem to be evolving, moving in the right direction. Might there be another question? Aha! Chris Walrath from the Isabel audience. Do you use tablets for music at all of your concerts, or is this a new innovation for you? Well, Annalee and I, for the most part now, are using Chris, we're using tablets for all of our concerts, and Jamie has just sort of started to come along. But I mean,
I've used it for, like I say, for a lot of stuff we've done with Tricia,
New music.
Miriam, new music things, some of the kids' things. But this was, I think, the first time that I, sort of actually used the iPad to scan in a bunch of my parts.
Yeah, it's quite
for big 30, 40-minute pieces.
But we were, before the iPads came out, we have these PDF readers, and their resolution is nothing, is really quite limited compared to iPads. But when many of you may have come to see our Constantinople multimedia performance, this was many years ago now, and in fact we couldn't memorize the entire performance, and we had all sorts of devices in our ears and all. So we had these PDF readers. So this was in 2004 that we were using those already. So we've actually, we're sort of early adopters and slowly easing.
And of course, what was funny about them, the Music Pad Pros or Music Pads,
they were great. That company supported the whole project. They were wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great innovation. But now that we've seen various generations of iPads come out. In retrospect, the notes almost look like medieval punctums. I mean, they were really pixelated. You'd write a fingering in, and it would be, it looked like your toddler wrote in your fingerings, and it would also delay turning the pages if there was too much information. And then it kind of looked like a grayscale fax paper, if you remember those. And every time, like every handful of years, we pull out the Constantinople project, and it's great. And we pull out our iPads, and then we all frantically go to the controls and go, it is on maximum brightness. It's just terrible, in compared to the Retina screens today. But at the time, it was a terrific innovation.
I mean, we've been using the iPads, I would say, for at least 2 to 3 years, and I don't miss having to lug around all the scores that we had to lug around. I was also sad. I mean, we have amazing scores that we've used over and over and over. Jamie's is, your collection is quite special.
I've got some, well-worn parts.
But we often, we scan the parts, so we're still looking at what we're used to looking at, so we're not looking at sort of...
Might there be one more question? Oh, this is wonderful, from our friend Barbara Nichols. from Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, who lives just down the street from the War Memorial. And we just performed at the War Memorial in January. So welcome to those from that audience that are with us today. We had a wonderful time there. We played 1/3 of our complete Beethovens there. In any case, just up the street from Barbara and Peter Nichols. And Barbara, who has a deep connection with the trio, stemming back actually to the Constantinople project, Barbara asks, now wait for it, are the hairdressers and barbers working in Toronto? If not, oh, this is very nice. I wasn't expecting that it was going to go there. If not, how do you keep looking so good? Well, well, I'm thankful.
I don't need a lot of work.
I don't need it. Yeah, and in any case, that's very nice. It is strange. I don't think I don't think I've had this much hair on my head in a long time.
I tried. I offered to cut it, but he wouldn't let me, especially since this was happening.
Well, in any case, I think tomorrow we might have a big hair adventure at our household, and who knows what happens. In any case, thank you, Barbara. And well, maybe on that note, it's been a wonderful evening. And you know what, I sit and I say that, I can imagine I'm looking here into that camera and people here and here. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Steve Wagaman, for jumping on this, the whole live streaming, Detroit Chamber Music Society of Detroit, for supporting his effort to adapt and innovate in this way. There's been much that Steve and the Detroit audience that have figured out. Thank you, War Memorial, for joining on, and Rhode Island Chamber Music Concerts. Of course, you know, our warm wishes to all of our friends at Ottawa Chamberfest. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and thank you. At Ottawa Chamberfest, we've come up with another little innovation called Chamber Chats, which we present on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can see more about that, sort of interviews with artists from all over the world. And thank you to that audience for joining us today. And of course, to Tricia Baldwin, to Aaron, Jesse, Noah, and Sonia, all of you back there. You've done an absolutely spectacular job. I mean, the preparation, I mean, you know, it's a tough time, and it's interesting to see just the kind of spirit and commitment that all of you have brought here, and Tricia Baldwin as the leader
and her audience. Thank you for the people from Kingston.
Thank you, you know, to Queen's University for supporting the creation of this incredible venue. I'd also like to thank Chloe and Peter and Jenna in Ottawa for helping out with the Ottawa Chamberfest component of this live stream. And well, we hope, you know, you know, please stay well. Please, you know, I know we all really want to go outside and the weather's getting better, but please resist the urge to completely ignore the fact that we do need to maintain our distance. We need to do our very best to keep this virus at bay, and give the scientists around us the time that they need to come up with the solution to this problem. But in the meantime, we know what the best practices are, you know, and let's adhere to them. Let's bring this thing down. And in the meantime, thank you to presenters and organizers like Tricia, my friends at Chamberfest, Steve Wagaman, Rhode Island Chamber Music Concerts, and the War Memorial for their willingness to work together and collaborate in this way. It's amazing that from within these constraints emerges this kind of collaboration and innovation. I mean, this is an international affair, this concert, and may that kind of collaboration continue, and I hope very much that we might see all of you in this way in the near future as often as is possible, but of course in person as soon as that can be done. So take care, be well. Many last words, my friends.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Good night.